Good morning and welcome to the Capital Gang. I am Oscar Semoyamsoke, and this morning with Moses is still in the studio. He wants me to say the word with a bevy of topics for you this morning. And easily the smartest person in the studio is Lydia Wanyoto Mutende. What's happening, Lydia?
To our listeners and viewers online, what do you mean, Oscar?
Very smart.
Thank you. I am wearing a white busuti with a blue belt, but this is for Mothers Union in honor of, we've lost a very senior elder in my community, Dr. Tunde, Nawe Mbale City. I hope that I'll be joining the family later in that day. So Mbale City, Nawe, you say Nawe.
Nawe is
the village.
Yeah, Nawe Mbale City.
And Joseph, Happy New Year, Joseph Otieno, my favorite UPC idealist, and the hat really making you look top notch.
Thank you very much, Oscar. It's always a pleasure to be here with you. My sincere condolences to ourselves, the citizens of the East, and I can just say to them, Oriana. It's always fantastic to be here.
Any news from the UPC party? Does it continue to sink, or
I was with
some hope?
I was with an NRA friend the other day, and he was saying that
NRA, not NRM.
NRM, they're the same, aren't they? You know, that no news is good news. So no, we continue to wait, but. No, I think things have been streamlining us towards a possible new start and a better start this year as a party. But yes, the leadership unresolved. But in terms of regeneration of the party, we continue to do that. And I'm delighted the kind of response I'm getting, particularly for younger people. And if you see the collapse of NRM, the way it's taking place, the shape is taking, and some of the other experimentalists around town, you know, there is no reason why people don't suddenly wake up to realize that, well, anything and everything that was dismantled by NRM, including our public organizations, you know, they were fundamentally wrong. And so the future is UPC, and the future is restructuring. The future is returning us to the vision of the future.
And have you started campaigns for the next election?
Very unfortunate. The future is UPC.
you know, for Ivan, you have no clue. At least Lydia, notwithstanding everything else, will tell you that it was not particularly a bad past.
To go backward.
No, the first family. That was married to the late Adoko Nechon. So
that's correct.
The first family until 1986.
So you see, Oscar, you can't lose that from that for the future.
I would be a different person to get now.
We move forward to move backward.
But don't you see how Ender is going round and round and round and round, break this, break this, attempt from UPC perspective here and there. But no, Oscar, we are here. We just hope that Ugandans recognize that NRA is tired and that they can return to Uganda People's Congress, the formality of traditions of political parties and organizations. But I just want to insist that whatever happens, we need to do it with humility. We need to do it together. We need to do it while building for the future rather than breaking whatever else foundation we've had as a country.
Okay. Most welcome to Capital Gang, Malcolm Pamizo.
Thank you, Oscar. A very good morning to our listeners.
Right. So far, you're the practicing lawyer in the studio. Abdul Katuntu is making his way. And
You're also a lawyer?
I use the word practicing. No, not
to be outdone.
Before a judge and begin speaking a lot of English or what?
Lydia is also a teacher.
Why are you now qualifying it?
But I said when I go for practicing teachers, then you have OSM, SMM, it's okay. But I would not call Lydia a practicing teacher.
I am the spoken English person here. You're absolutely right, Oscar.
Thank you. So, Malcolm, our first topic of the day is NUP supporters who've been in jail, I think, is it 2 years?
Yes.
And they couldn't get bail. So how does that court work? Why couldn't they get bail?
Well, it's actually over 3 years for some of them, as early as December 2020, before before the election, and unfortunately they were also denied their right to vote in the process, which hopefully will be rectified in 2026 after the court decision that allowed the rights of inmates as well. I think that the challenges that we face in this particular situation, and I was sharing with a few colleagues earlier in the week about the challenges between when politics and the law go at each other. Oftentimes politics wins, because it is very, very clear that 3 years down the road into a 4th year, this is a political conversation, not a legal one, because the same sureties that were approved for 4 of the suspects that were allowed to leave were seen as unsubstantial for the others. When you discuss when you're going to do about the substantiality of sureties, it's not rocket science. It is very straightforward things. Home overboard. Do you have a national ID? Are you traceable? And very straightforward things that would apply across the board. However, they allowed it for some and denied it for the others. And I think the pending embarrassment is what prompted the head of the court martial to kick the journalists out of the court, because it would be a real expose of what is happening in there. I've had a few conversations with some of the representatives of the suspects, and in a country where 3 years down the road you are a suspect in detention, you have not even begun to engage in the material evidence that is before you. You inevitably can't question whose justice we are seeking. Whose justice is it if 3 years down the road you're still treated in this manner? That notwithstanding, there is a constitutional court decision, and I think Honorable Semuju alluded to this at the last show, how disrespectful this government is of court decisions. There is a court decision that says civilians shouldn't be tried before military courts. These are civilians. That court decision is ignored 100%. Now, there's an attempt to use the appeal to the Supreme Court as a way in which they can maintain the status quo. But then again, it goes back to whose justice are we seeking? Are we on the side of Ugandans, or are we on the side of parts of Uganda? Because when a court ruling like that goes down, if the Attorney General is representing Ugandans, then the presumption is that the decision that will be taken will be one that favors the ends of justice. Why hold one person or 28 people or several others even longer than they should be held simply because you want to prove a point in the Supreme Court? At worst, you would be able to present them before the rightful court if the charges are real, and then hold them in that particular process. So a lot of it really is politics and the law going at each other, and in a dispensation that we are in right now, it is politics that wins every day of the week, and certainly twice on Sunday.
Some were released.
Yes, yes. 4 of them were released.
Because
their sureties were found to be substantial enough, while the others were not, and there was no detailed explanation as to what that really entails. But we've seen this before, where the same sureties are provided, and you will pick on a certain technicality as an anomaly, and rely on that as a basis to throw out a surety. But that does not necessarily question the substantiality of them, especially sometimes when you have same surety accepted for one group and then denied for another group.
Ivan, the practicing lawyer, has spoken. I'm thinking of a question to ask of because he said the journalists were thrown out because of a pending embarrassment. Do you agree with that?
I saw that journalists were kept out of court. And
is it thrown out or kept out? They were thrown out.
The thrown out assumes they had already entered and then they were ejected. But if the gates were closed and they were barred from entry, I think kept out is the
we could go with barred from entry, but kept out. You're trying to nice up things, but
he's learning my English.
He's seated in Ofonopondo 6. So
you can imagine that.
But of course that is what happens if it's the military court trying these people, because I think the military court gets away with is not. I
think you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the military court gets away with has so much latitude, unchecked latitude, to do as they they please, or with very limited.
You have struggled with this submission.
No, I am trying to get the right word.
Just say things.
I can't just say things. The thing is that with the civilian courts, there are clear rules, regulations. You cannot keep out journalists, for example. You cannot. But the prerogative. So a combination of, first of all, the unique laws and regulations that govern military courts, and the fact that the question of bail is a prerogative of the law says you are entitled to bail, but then it does not set clear definite grounds for which you can sue a judge for not granting you bail. It leaves it as a prerogative of the jury to determine what conditions are satisfactory enough to grant you bail. So in that case, if you have then the military judging those conditions, and I think the military court first answers to the chain of command in the military, and then the commander-in-chief, that is an invitation for politics to play a disproportionate role in adjudicating the matters before it. And I think it's strange, because the question of the court trying civilians has been in the public jury since, I think, 2005, since the Chisa Vesige incident, I think, in 2005. And now this is almost 20 years later, and that question is still not yet settled. So I think that the judiciary owes the public matter for settling, because even if it was appealed, that is a very important matter, because we continue to see incidents where these incidents of civilians being tried in courts keep reappearing. So the judiciary must firmly settle and finally settle that case for good, so that you can have a firm grounds for challenging that impunity when it takes place. So I think that for the 39 and the other people find themselves in an unfortunate situation, and I think the justice system and the judiciary owes them an explanation, or at least put in place conditions that aid justice and not continue to serve the interests of power against the. Because I think the way our law is structured is that you're more inclined to err on the side of justice, of the victim, of the defendant, than on the other end. I don't know the right legal terminologies to use, but I think what we are seeing now with the military,
i.e., you're innocent until proven
exactly, you're innocent
guilty.
until proven guilty. But now, if you've been kept in court for 3-4 years,
in prison,
in prison for the last 4 years, as investigations continue, the implicit, the unstated implicit status quo is that you are guilty until proven innocent, which is an unfortunate reversal of the foundational ethos of the justice justice system.
Lydia, Ivan seems to suggest let's just resign about this. It is what it is in the military court.
No, I will use simple English. I saw my brother Ivan struggling. I think the first cases that should be cleared is that civilians should not be tried in a military court martial. That should be the issue to be resolved. Once they are now moved to the civilian courts, either the magistrate court or the high court, whatever, they can proceed the court of appeal, then their issues can now be on table. Because now, the moment they are civilians, that's why people are struggling to explain, because there is already a variance at that level of the law of the land. Yes, that's all I can say. But
in
terms
simple
of
English, from a lawyer.
That is it. It is whole English. Everybody knows that when you are a civilian, you should never be tried in the court martial. You should be taken to what we call the civilian courts. Now, it will make sense now when talking about issues of whether the matters charged can be bailed. Even bail should be processed in the civilian courts. That to me, that's where the starting point is. The rest is a detail, but which court really matters? Because if you file a matter in a wrong court, it should be thrown out. It's dead on arrival. That's what I know, and I think that's the law.
That's what happens anyway in a civilian court.
Transacting any court matter in a wrong court, because the rules of the game are very clear that you file in the right court, and if you're in the wrong court, the matter is thrown out.
Interesting.
Or redirected for that matter.
Interesting. Yes. Joseph, this is something a UPC government would clear straight away.
Yes, and in any case, it would never appear under a UPC administration.
But history proves you wrong. It did appear in the past, but
no, it did not.
You'd say in today's time.
No, it did not, and it would.
Arrested in a cabinet meeting and
Ivan, who's less than 38 years old, now wants to become an expert in my field.
That history.
You could not actually even compare the detention of the cabinet ministers of the 60s with anything linked to this very apparent NRA impunity, which is going on, which, as explained by everybody else, quite clearly, there is no reason why civilians should be tried in a military court. And I was just thinking, Oscar, as I was coming, that come to think of it, I missed, because of other commitments, participating at the Janan Luwum event. And so if we are celebrating Janan Luwum, who was killed by Idi Amin in circumstances related to some of these other things, then what lessons have we learned? But that said, as the leader was saying, I was just reminding myself that around the time Ivan was being born, I was just joining public services elsewhere as a public officer. And so I engaged with courts variously. But yes, the burden of responsibility should really be, in this case, with the state. And if it takes 3 years for them not to be able to do anything, by and large, if it was an average, sensible court, these matters would be thrown out. And in fact, in this case, the defendants would have rights to actually sue for huge compensation. Unfortunately, it would still be our money.
You make an interesting observation that if we have celebrated the Janan Luwum public holiday, a man who was killed by the military, then we should have taken lessons, and these people shouldn't be tried in a military court.
Absolutely, and in any case, part of what galvanized the Ugandans both at home and abroad, particularly from about the death of Janan Luwum, which really brought together many Ugandans across the political divide to seek to end the Amin's regime, were precisely that. And so you'd expect people in NRA, particularly those ones with extensions from NASA allegedly, to know better and to have every reason to say that never again as a people and as a country. But of course now we know as maybe we'll be discussing later, that many of these guys' objects were not necessarily to seek liberation that we're working for, nor did they have the definition of a liberation as you and I have it today. I'm just very, very sad, honestly, and this really cannot be partisan. And I think I acknowledge the tone by Lydia, that quite clearly the conversation we should be having is we should not be having a conversation about civilians being tried in a military court 38 years after a military regime that came to power, allegedly seeking to overthrow an elected government, allegedly claiming that the law and order sort of did not exist. You talk about the UP's administration. Never under Obote II administration, Obote II, which was substantially faced by insurgents and rebellions between 1981 and 85, would you get any experience, scintilla of this kind of experience in the Republic of Uganda? Not on record. Thankfully, we have here people, a parliamentarian and indeed a colleague who's been in parliament before. We can check a Hansard as the most authoritative a document for reference to help Ivan. I'm just asking that.
I forgot to add that you might find that Malcolm is younger than Ivan. So a lot of history is read. So when you are accusing Ivan of being younger than
I'm just mesmerized by young Ivan, by the audacity and capacity and energy.
So is Malcolm. Malcolm is younger than Ivan, just for your information.
Malcolm, I was pairing you because on this occasion you are on the right side of the argument. So your age is actually disregarded. Oscar, I think that this conversation should go beyond the court-martial. It should go beyond the judiciary, and it should actually go beyond polity, and we should really take it up to the highest office on the land. And that's why I was very deliberate. I don't know what Mr. Museveni, you as a journalist, I don't know what Mr. Museveni says and has said about this. In any case, if you're having a conversation in which these days now we have military officers, serving military officers, not only serving in key public offices, but in many cases engaging substantially in partisan politics. And then it becomes a subject for conversation for us as a by the way. I get concerned why I was continuously referring to Ivan, and in this case Malcolm. And indeed, I sort of just seem to notice that I'm actually the oldest in this panel, but particularly for the two young men. We are anxious, Lydia will agree, that we need to do everything possible to make sure that we create a possibility in this country in which in our lifetime, Leader, you and I, when we are retired in our great East, that there is a rule of law, and all the conversations that we had in the 60s and 80s and 90s and now 2000s are part of history, building blocks for law professors reading books that Abdul would have written.
Let's go to Abdul, who is the Mwalimu practicing lawyer and MP. Supporters denied bail, as you've heard across the table. They shouldn't have been in that court. Lydia, if you're in the wrong court, you're dismissed. So having them not been dismissed, are they in the right court? A few issues to ponder about.
Are they in the right court? The issue is actually in the Supreme Court for determination. It has been there for quite a long time, and this is the time. Not only do we have to blame the court-martial, but also the judiciary, that you have such a fundamental issue affecting hundreds or even really the stability of this country, and you sit on it, your Supreme Court. What's going on in this country? Who checks the Supreme Court? It's a conversation I've been having with my peers or the judiciary. Because this is an issue which should have been determined long ago, such that you can guide the courts or you guide the country. The general principle of law is just must not only be done, but seen to be done. Can you say that there's justice being done when somebody is on remand, he has not been tried for 3 years? It does not make legal, neither does it make common sense. It's for lack of better words to use, but it is so shambolic.
It is injustice.
No, it's worse than injustice. It shows what society is, this one. And because you see, I imagine the Supreme Court being the highest court of the land should be able to guide, especially on critical areas where there is a controversy. Because it is setting standards. By now, they should have resolved that issue long ago. What are we seeing? Do we have judges in the Supreme Court? Of course we do. Do they think this as a priority? Maybe not. Why do you even go to a civil dispute when you have this critical issue which you need to guide the country? And now they are making us enter into a very useless conversation, extremely useless conversation. The families are having problems, and there is a Supreme Court there with the judges who have not determined a very critical issue. So, to me, when you look at the Constitution, it's very clear. Justice must not be delayed. It's a constitutional command. Is there just being delayed? Of course it's there. Now, if you have a just system which says, by the way, what we are going to do, we are not allowing people to know what we are going to do. Excuse me. Is that a just system? That you have people locked up in a room, they say what we are going to do is so classified, and nobody is allowed to even come take a picture or even report what is going on here.
And by the way, that's part of the
lawyer, if you're a lawyer with some judicious mind, if you're an ordinary Uganda with a just mind, you cannot support this sort of thing. And I should, maybe if it was a time of Major Butabika, was he called Butabika?
Yeah, one of those.
Or Captain Kill Me Quick.
Are you talking about Joseph Otieno's people?
No. Those are Idi Amin.
Oh, those are Idi Amin.
I have a problem with Joseph Otieno's people because
you are one
at
of
some
them.
point they are mine, and they are both mine and Joseph's. So. Because if it was an army of Itabka, of Captain Kill Me Quick, of those, but this is an elite army. People who have gone to the best of universities, people who have got the best of degrees. We expect some very, very intelligent lawyers. I know one general, my contemporary, my junior but contemporary, he got a first-class degree in law. In Makerere. He went for his postgraduate in United Kingdom, and he was the best at a master's level. So we are not talking about ordinary people. We are talking about 5-star brains who are managing this institution called UPDF, who have done a very good job in terms of fighting, because at least you can know that we have a secure country. But if you have a secure country in terms of you don't have insurgents ranging on in the country, or the sovereignty is guaranteed, but then what of this thing about security of the people? Because it comes in.
The most basic, anyway. Because
security of the people is not about war.
Yeah.
But if I'm being picked and I'm locked up for 3 years without subject me to a trial with evidence brought, do you talk about security of the people? I think this is a real fundamental question which should be answered, and it's quite sad that we are having a debate like this. I would rather the country debates about challenges of economy and so on, but not unavoidable, because these really are avoidable things. We can avoid them. In 24 hours, this can be avoided. It's not a debate. But you can imagine how the country is debating this. We are grappling with it. You know, my young brother Ivan is trying to get words here, put them, piece them up together.
Cobble them up together.
Yeah. Like this village of mine who has a torn trouser, and he patches it up here, then it gives away here.
I have
think
switched off his microphone, and he's enjoying his third samosa in this period.
So I think Dionobo Sempija, as a minister for defense, owes the country better and an explanation, and so is Nobody.
Norbert Mao.
Of course, Norbert Mao actually is the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Affairs in this country.
I've just remembered.
And why have you just remembered? You want this joke of remembering who is a vice president always?
No comment.
So I think the Minister of Justice need to take up this. And Norbert Mao is very clear in his mind on many of these issues. We don't have to ask him. He's quite clear and so on. I only hope he takes it as one of the priorities. He has too much on his desk, but I think he should take up this one.
Malcolm, it's the politics, as you said, politics and the law. It's interesting that if Norbert Mao is the minister of the ministry concerned and he's from the opposition. So sometimes Lydia doesn't have kind words.
Yeah, she's reminding me that he sat in this very seat and asked her to have her school fees refunded from Gayaza.
No, it is to her late father.
Okay.
And the reason was I had said that main opposition in Uganda would love to serve in the NRM government. So should that school fees be refunded to my late father or should actually stand?
Lydia, you said a different thing. Don't accuse Mao for the offense he didn't
opposition
commit.
in Uganda, they would love to join government. So as we speak today, no, it's a point.
It's actually very important. To the extent also
But
that
if you're in opposition, you want to join the government, what do you want to do? Is your opposition a career? Everybody who joins the politics wants to join the government.
Going back
I fear that you might come before the court martial since Mao is the minister, so we might want to let that one go. I do agree, and this is a moment, Oscar, that is, I think one that we should record, and where everyone at the table is in agreement on how unrealistic this unrealistic this situation is, and how we shouldn't be.
Apart from Joseph, there's no partisan stand on this. it's just Ivan agreed as well. He just didn't want to say I agree.
Yeah, no. I think that we are all on the same page, that we shouldn't be in this situation where we have justice delayed for these particular people. But you see, I actually think that for Lydia it was a bit of a cop out when she chose to only comment on how things should be. I think last week we were talking about being academic. And not focusing on what the practicalities are, because these 28 that are still in are not the only group that is there. By the time they were brought forward, this question was up for discussion. When Honorable Katuntu asks the Supreme Court why they have not dealt with this matter, I think we could actually debate why they have not, because there are certain ideas going around as to why it hasn't happened. And what can we do about that? It can't be certainly the backlog that they were claiming extra judges for, because we know matters that have come later than this and have actually been resolved. So these are political questions by and large that have to be answered by the government of the day. I certainly sympathize with Ivan trying to find the words, but I think Mr. Otieno here was asking about Museveni's position on this. I think it is very clear. He might not have publicly come out to say it, but he has publicly come out to say things that he is against. We know that there are very many things in this country that wouldn't happen without his either blessing or he turns a blind eye. So we need to interrogate exactly why we find ourselves in this situation. We don't act like it's new, like it happened only for these 28. It has happened for several others before. We have court decisions that have said this shouldn't be happening. They have been ignored. And when all is said and done, again, we've had the courts are used as a tool, as a political tool, because it is very possible that after 5 years of detention, these 28 will be released and they will be told we couldn't find evidence.
Ivan, coming back to the microphone, you seem to suggest that military court can get away with quite a lot So we just sit back and accept.
No. I
They
mean,
need to
the
do
point that I didn't do that. In fact, the point, the Honorable Katuntu emphasized the point I started with. The point that this question, the judiciary bears primary responsibility for resolving this matter. Because like I said, I'm the one who said that this matter was first challenged in court, I think from 2005 when Kiza Besigye and others were first tried in the military court. That is when it came out for public debate and also litigation in the courts of law. It's now nearly 20 years, 19 years this year, and this question has not yet been settled. So the judiciary, for me, bears primary responsibility for not guiding the country or settling this question. And for me, this is not an isolated incident. This may be a highly maybe unmeeting public opinion because it is a highly politically contentious. The people involved are political actors at this level. But there are many cases that are languishing in the courts, and people are suffering the same issue. I've been trying to stand surety, for example, for a certain individual who is currently before court. It's now 2 months. I think they were arrested during Christmas period in December. It's now more than 2 months. They are still on remand. Every time there's a bail hearing, it's adjourned. The question, I don't know, and the Honorable Katuntu can guide here, if the law or the constitution can set clear and definite parameters on which somebody is entitled to bail. Because the question now, today, is left to the prerogative of the judge, to the extent that he feels that your sureties and the issues you're raising are legitimate.
Even courts have already determined, they have set the standards, and so it's no longer a contentious issue. But, for example, for the any judge or judicial officer to say, okay, I've had the application for bail, I adjourn the case for 3 weeks for ruling. Incredible.
Yeah.
Why? Because you see, it's about, okay, is this a bailable offense or not?
Yes.
What are the sureties and so on?
Yeah.
And you must take a decision.
Yeah.
And if you can't take it, at least take it the following day.
Yeah.
You can, but to say I adjourn for 4 weeks to give a ruling,
it's unfair, and I think usually the state also,
it's purely abuse of a judicial process.
You find the state attorneys, for example, asking, you present sureties, you have all the documentation, they say, we need a month to review, to authenticate the documentation submitted by the sureties. Surely it's like Abdul Katuntu said, it's an abuse of judicial processes, but also it shows, because you see, there's also a question of justice. The other principle abiding justice, like Katuntu said, is justice delayed is justice denied. No matter how, because look, the state has a very clear responsibility if you have cases. For me, let's even assume it's in the civilian court, because these delays are not a monopoly of the military court. They are also happening in civilian court. So let's even assume the case is happening in the civilian court. These same delays, we've seen these same delays happen. And so we must task the judiciary to be responsible. Because look, if I know being in the military court is a problem, but if this matter had been prosecuted and settled in, say, 3 weeks, whether in the military court or something, then we could be debating at least the legitimacy of the court and not the injustice on the delay. Because for 3 or 4 years, if people are still in court, there is a problem. So I think that the Chief Justice, he's been going on. Part of the administration, part of the responsibility of administration is settling or putting in place processes that are clear, definite, time bound, so that people realize that it restores confidence in the justice system.
Yeah.
So across
I interviewed the DPP at the time, 2017. And he said it was 2017. And he said it was unfortunate that at that time that the remand period can go up to 4 years.
Yeah. Can you?
And he said it was unfortunate, but I don't know what it is now.
I don't think the word is unfortunate.
It's abuse. In fact, it's criminal. In fact, it's not unfortunate. It's criminal. It's criminal. Because you see, the problem with the remand is that the merit of your case is not yet debated. So you are not yet even debating the question of guilt and innocence. It is just the holding place for the prosecution and the people to investigate. So if you can't investigate a case for a month, for 2 months, for 3 months, it very likely means you really don't have much to offer, and that is why you have people who on remand
And
after 4 years, and then they are dismissed and freed.
No, there is in law, there's what they call a nolle prosequi, meaning the DPP comes and withdraws the case.
Yeah.
But you've been there for 4 years.
Yeah.
Then he comes and just withdraws the
So
case
perhaps for me,
without giving any reason, because the law doesn't require him to give any
My
reason.
question for me is that in
So,
such incidences,
The system has condemned you. You've served your sentence without being tried.
So for me, my question in such cases is: can the victims or the people on trial, once free, do they have ground to sue the justice system?
I hope
Even if they did, let me tell you, they have taken off 4 years of your life. Even if they gave you money, what can they do with it? Your children have not gone to school. If you have a beautiful wife, maybe some money has taken her and so you've destroyed the family.
So for me,
So what
finally,
can
Oscar,
money compensate?
rather than just always, because I think the politics and the president and what are always the easy targets, because this is a political issue. The people on trial are on the other side, so it is easy to just point to the president and the status quo and the government of the day. But let us task the judiciary, let them set the rulings, and then let's hold government accountable for saying the courts have settled this question. They conducted a swift trial. They made a ruling on this matter, and then you're disobeying these orders, because the primary responsibility for justice, for overseeing the justice sector and the judicial system, is the responsibility of the judiciary and the presiding officers.
You want to protest?
Yeah, I want to I don't know if protest is the right word, but I disagree with Ivan, because there have been situations, circumstances where the judiciary has made it clear. We remember the Black Mamba days, when it was very clear what was coming from the judiciary, and the politics still took over. The government disrespected what had been said. The executives didn't agree with what had been said by the judiciary.
And,
so I think that
there was
it is
unanimous condemnation of those acts.
But where did that get us? Similar to what?
We no longer see those cases of where people are freed
Malcolm,
Malcolm,
I respectfully want to agree with you. Let people do what they are supposed to do.
Yes,
Exactly.
yes.
That's the most important.
Yes,
Let the judicial do what it's supposed to do.
Yes.
And if some other person is interfering with their independence, then we can handle that.
Then we can handle that.
Yeah, but we cannot say, by the way, even if we do this, they are going to do that.
No, Adam, that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that putting the blame squarely on the judiciary is basically saying, let them do what they're supposed to do,
Yes.
and we see what happens.
Yes.
However, we have seen what happens when the judiciary does what they're supposed to do. Let us not ignore that has happened.
Then
as well.
we shall handle that
but
one also.
How did we handle it when it happened?
Malcolm is saying we are disregarding the role of the executive.
Let me give an example, Oscar.
In addressing
In
this
the
issue.
NRM,
Even the military is an executive function.
Yes.
So we can say,
Go on.
Which is why
Go on, Ivan.
I don't want us to be,
Let's have Ivan on.
I don't want us to be
Academic.
cynical. Yeah, and I don't want us to be cynical, because we've also seen
Go to the
several
microphone,
institutions,
Ivan.
several cases where the judiciary has stood up against the executive, and it has carried the day. We have cases of NRM MPs where the Secretary General of the party, where the President, I think, even saw an affidavit or something like that. A very interesting, where the NRM party and the executive had clear interest. The Speaker of Parliament ruled. The case went up to the courts, and the court ruled against the government, and those people stayed in Parliament. We didn't see an abuse of that. We have seen Kizza Besigye tried 1 million times in this country. Every time he has been acquitted, even on matters. In 2005,
The last time he was in court, he refused to get bail. It took the magistrate to say, even if you have refused, you have it.
Yeah, but I wanted to.
So that's what Katuntu is saying here.
In 2005, for example, the powers that be did not want Kizza Besigye to be nominated. The case went up to the courts, and they ruled that he could be nominated. He was the biggest challenger to the president.
I don't.
The point is that because it happens sometimes, it's okay.
Actually, in most
Is that your
times,
point?
So we should.
in fact, the majority of the
And
time.
in law,
But the law requires it to
And in
happen
law,
all the time.
Yes, I agree. That's an ideal situation. But I think that if we are debating this matter, we cannot hide behind the executive, because the majority of times the executive has actually applied.
No, practically speaking, the military courts fall under the executive. Okay,
Complete.
so implying that if the executive was doing its business, what it's supposed to do, okay, we wouldn't find ourselves in the situation where we are then overtasking, and let's not mince words. We're overtasking a judiciary that has been usurped as well, because there's we
almost suddenly instructed.
literally instructed on how they are supposed to proceed.
Malcolm, in that same year that I interviewed the DPP, then I also interviewed the prisons boss. Dr. Biabashej, and he also was expressed disappointment that when the courts don't work, their place is overcrowded.
Yes.
Because some people can be released.
And let me tell you, Oscar, the cases where the politics have a clear interest are the minority. They are the fewest. But the question of injustice that we are debating here, of people being on remand for years, of justice delayed, of people abusing judicial power officers to grant bail or deny it across the country are a majority of instances. Not all these cases, the government does not have an interest in almost all of these cases. So to let the judiciary off the hook because we have a political case, one incident where political actors are the center of public debate, is really to excuse the judiciary and enable injustice for the majority of Ugandans.
I don't think that is what Malcolm is doing.
Across the country.
Abdul, as you're coming on,
Yes.
we need another book for Ivan answering your own questions. So
From last year.
I want to support.
you remember the other time he said you're asking the wrong question. So he's always answering his own questions. But Abdul, as you come on microphone, the two MPs that were released, I saw in the newspapers that they were in court, but they'd also not been to court. How long? Was it 2 years? The honorable MPs of NUP, Sejirinya, and so their case has come up. And for them, they were given bail after a few years, but they are the people co-accused. Are they still in prison? Still the same thing?
I don't always want to speculate, but I think they are. And that's why the problem, and the very point Ivan was raising. But to go back before I even answer your question in detail, Oscar, we have three arms of the state. And there's this legal philosophy of balance of power, separation and balance of power. Each arm of government or state should check on the other.
Yes.
The reason why you have the judiciary is to check on the excesses of both the executive and the legislature. So you cannot say, by the way, the judiciary is not the problem, it's the executive. It is there for that purpose. Check on the excesses of the legislature and excesses of the executive. That is their job. That's why the constitutional makers just said, no, we need to create this. So it is absconding from your own responsibility. And you are being an apologist of your own weakness. To say, by the way, even if we do this what will happen? Why are you in those robes of yours saying you're a judge, you're an independent judiciary? You are supposed to do exactly what we are asking you to do. So that's point number one. And maybe it calls another question. What if the judiciary is not dispensing just as envisaged under the Constitution? What do we do? How do we get the judiciary accountable? Forget about the self-mechanism within the judiciary. Because you see, what is it? Article 126 says which sets up the judiciary. You are supposed to administer the judiciary, in the name of the people, in accordance with the norms and aspirations and values of our people. Assuming you are breaching on that, what do we do as a country? Yet we know you are independent. So maybe it's time we started looking at it, because you see, if Parliament makes a mistake, people take it to court. If the executive makes a mistake, people take it to court. If the judiciary makes a mistake and it is in a fundamental breach of their constitutional obligation, what do we do?
You go to court. You go to the Supreme Court.
You go to the very court. Oh, I was about to do a.
That is the only recourse you have.
To go to develop people. So, and what of this animal called conflict of interest?
We have seen this case, by the way, before in Kenya right now, where a lawyer, senior lawyer, has been suspended from appearing before the Supreme Court.
His workers and
his law for
it is so ridiculous.
Why?
The Supreme Court
That he was condemning and undermining the judiciary.
So imagine, so the man has no recourse. He is an employee. He's employing over
But you don't go too far, Kenya. Isn't that was it not Mabiri's case? You don't need to go too far. Eventually, what got him was annoying a judge.
Yes.
So you see, that's where the problem is. But maybe that should be a topic for another day. You need to get the judiciary spokesperson and the members of the law society, and then we can have a conversation about it.
I think academia.
No, we
And academy, of course.
I think it's a very important gap.
no, Joseph, I should tell you that the minister now is a former gang member, so we should start there.
My brother,
yes,
Nobert.
Nobert Mao.
And I know
start
him.
there.
He'll be very glad to come and speak his mind, because
And
that's
then-
what he is.
And we'll conclude the issue of Lydia's fees.
Except-
at that time.
But beyond Lydia's fees,
Yeah.
Lydia also makes a very important point that he also, the idea of what talk is cheap, that we should translate talk into action. So my good brother Nobert, I'm sure is a favorite with this.
No, let him come here and
Let him come here and do the needful, and most important, let him act.
Yeah. So
You'll be
let's stop for a quick break and continue the discussion after the break.
The Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM. Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.
Welcome back from the break. Good discussions in the break as well, plus corrections. Let's close this out, beginning with you, Malcolm. There's a point you're making that we can conclude the topic with.
Yes, Oscar. I think that.
Sorry, I caught you
Yes,
with the Star Cafe.
the chapatis.
I'm not so sure how many
coffee
chapatis you had with the coffee.
on only 3 small triangular pieces.
You can have as many as you want. Star Cafe is here.
Yeah, no, exactly. So 3 small triangular pieces, Oscar. Exactly. No, I think the point I was trying to make was that as we put the judiciary to the sword, as to why they are not doing what they're supposed to do and not standing up, we need to, one, appreciate that these political cases are the ones that rise to national discussion and have an opportunity to set the precedent for all the others that Ivan is talking about. The thousands of people who are out there suffering because the judiciary is not doing what they're supposed to do. If they were encouraged to do what they're supposed to do in this particular case, it would set the precedent. But also importantly is to interrogate and understand how we have come to this point with this judiciary, where they sit on such a very important matter and we do not get a resolution on it that would certainly set the course of justice for very many of our fellow Ugandans. So I think that's something that we need to be able to interrogate, and that's where the practicality of it comes in. That yes, the judiciary must be checked, so it checks the others. The judiciary must do what they're supposed to do, but how do we get to a point where the judiciary is as it is now, and how can we move away from that to be able to get them to do what they're supposed to do?
The Abdul, in that same year must have been very interesting. November 2017, I interviewed on television Justice Willie Mutunga, and I asked him, in Kenya, can it happen again with a judge cancelling an election? And he said, probably not. So when Malcolm says, how did we get here? I mean, even Kenya, a former justice saying, he does not think any other judge would come up and cancel an election.
So what was special about him cancelling an election?
He was activist. He said.
Come on. That's arrogance. Yes,
It's a
because
question
you see,
Malcolm is asking. He says,
for you
it's
to
what
say
Malcolm is saying.
that can only happen because I am the one.
No,
Malaga.
It was Malaga who had.
Yes.
No, I asked him,
there
can
is
it be another?
Let me tell you.
And he said, no, it can't. The intimation was that maybe activist judges are not there. The politicians are now stronger than what Malcolm was saying.
No. You see,
These things
to
are
me,
cultural.
everybody should be given a chance.
Yeah.
You get it? And I don't want to prejudge. There are people who respect their judicial oath and they'll dispense just without fear or favor. And there are many judicial officers out there, whether in Kenya, in Uganda, anywhere. Even if the system is such that it stifles their independence and judicial powers, they rise over it. So everyone should be judged by his decision he has taken. That's when I can judge somebody, because I am judicious, and people should be judicious. This blanket accusation and determining people, I think, is very, very unfair. To many people who go out and don't sleep the whole night because they are trying to find justice to people who have come to their courts. So, having said that, yes, we have challenges. Did we expect not to have those challenges? I mean, it would be very naive, extremely naive. Those challenges are always there. How do we rise over them? I think that's the most important. And one of the reasons why you have a public conversation like we are having here is because of that. And I'm sure one or two judges are on their radios listening. And those who are listening, please, that's what the public is thinking. And some of them take it seriously. We speak to them, because where do you speak to a judge? Do you go to his court? Do you go to his home? But, if he has an opportunity to listen to a talk show like this one, he is speaking in public opinion. He's speaking. And there are others who take public opinion seriously. There is one of the most respected judges in the history of this country has just written, he wrote something, say he wanted to breathe life into a lifeless constitution. There are things judges must do, like exactly what that judge was talking about.
I think I know the person.
No, I don't know. I don't think you don't know. I think you don't know him. So, I think we need to be, as a public, to be vigilant, and where we think justice is not dispensed in our name, not in accordance with our values, our norms, and our aspiration, we should say so, and loudly so.
Joseph, as we sit here, and Malcolm has done his he's now, I think, managed the fourth slice of chapati. You have to feel for these people, whether in a court martial or, as Ivan points out, all those people not having justice. It's ridiculous. You think of them, and Abdul said, their families and all that.
No, I do. One, I'm UPC, so we are a party founded on the values of the citizenry, but the party that focuses on the most marginalized in society. Oscar, but number two is that at my earliest time as a Makerere University student, I fell prey to this politics of NRA impunity. I was arrested, and for the first time, detained, and spent time not only on a police cell, but in go-downs that now we know are safe houses. So I have an idea that what it is basically to be, put aside and put away in uncertainty, and let alone exile and many other things. So it's completely sad. But I think Abdul was talking about it much earlier, about this business about family, this business about community, this business about people's lives. I think we mentioned also the members of parliament, like the Segreñas, the impact on people's health and long-term impact on community. So it's completely unacceptable. But this is really about the executive's politics of impunity and politics of patronage. So because some of the nuances are suggested here are quite clearly the case that we have a system, in this case possibly the court-martial, these military guys, some of them substantially educated, many times educated using our money, but they're there to serve the particular interest rather than to expedite what is essentially, the roles and responsibilities in terms of the law. Oscar, at the beginning of the conversation, I wanted to avoid, and you're trying to push me towards that. I wanted to avoid my own case, where you have I have a judicial review which should have been expedited within 6 months. It has taken 3 years. I have a case where a judge tells you that the matter they will make a ruling in 3 months' time, and you feel very sad. And 12 months later, nothing has happened. And this is happening in this particular country. One time, personally, I just want to say it, I nearly called journalists to a court, and I really didn't want to have this kind of conversation, to a court, basically to call a press conference and simply say, what? You, Mr. Museveni, and your entire team, what do we do? Do we now also go to the bush? So my point is this, that whatever happens, whatever the implications, I think the idea that we can do anything and everything to get away with it, I know at the end of it is really to blackmail and to intimidate Ugandans, that if you go into the streets like these poor young supporters of NUP are, you're going to end up in jail, you're going to end up in prison. And mothers and fathers, particularly mothers, simply say, oh, my daughter, oh, my son, don't go with that Ochieno, because if you're seen with him, you'll disappear and you'll not get out. That really, really is the critical matter. And I think it's a shame that is coming out of an NRA regime, particularly one that has stayed hang around for the 38 years. But things catch up with you. To the extent that it's catching up with you, to the extent that now we don't know in the next few weeks whether NRA may exist as it is, or it is going to become a pressure group in charge post next year. I have no clue. I think it's sad. I think it's a shame. But the opportunity still lies with the Comrade Museveni, an elder gentleman. He should sit back and listen to Capital Gang, examine his conscience, as old Milton would say, and say, no, I think enough is enough. It is possible for us to start a new course for our country.
Ivan, conclusion?
No, I don't think I have much
to add on
that subject. I hope that the judiciary is listening. Let them do their part, and then we will turn guns on the people, defying court orders or rulings of the court. But for now, the people are under the justice system, and we have to place the responsibility of injustice fairly with that system under which they are being tried. If they are being tried illegally in a military court, that question is also in the Supreme Court for the court to settle if civilians can still be tried in the civilian court, and they have not yet settled that question. So if they settle that question, we can proceed.
Okay, Lydia, as you're having final word on this. So there's a discussion going on. Moses Biarhanga says, Malcolm, you're saying that the executive abused a court decision by trying civilians in a military court. Abdul has told you that the matter is before the Supreme Court. So you, Malcolm, yes, Malcolm, direct your attack on the Supreme Court, not the executive. And if Abdul, if a judiciary makes mistakes, you go to the people through a referendum.
Well, this would say that.
But well, another lawyer has kicked in. Robert Kirunda says, actually, the Supreme Court settled that question of trial of civilians in the court-martial a long time ago. The regime just doesn't care what the courts say on this issue. Just tell the public that, and we all move on. A referendum is not needed.
No. But Robert is wrong. Okay, there's just he's just mistaken. He's talking about the Constitutional Court. The Constitutional Court made a decision, and it was appealed to the Supreme Court, and that's where the Kabizuruka case. So it's not that the Supreme Court had settled it.
Lydia, final comment on that, and then we move to the next topic.
The conversation is important. It's out there, and we hope that at the end of the day there will be clear precedents, so that when people are supposed to be tried in the right court, it so happens, and that if there are questions of appeal or questions of the law, they should also be addressed. Issues of time affect justice, and that's a given. So I hope that this conversation will add on to maybe the pressure, because the contribution of the gang is also to make life a public issue, so that we are able to address matters as they are. That's all I can say. But I realize that these days also the current judiciary and the court, they are not the traditional guys of the ground that Katuntu talked about. They also like media. They also issue statements. So I hope they should be able to listen to the pulse of the public in terms of when people run to the judiciary, they are seeking justice, and justice should come soon in terms of time, because the chain of pain is not just on the individual. It's about their families, it's about their children, but also their future and aspirations. So time is of essence. Otherwise, you would stay with the problem. But going to court requires that you are set free, or you are condemned and then you serve your sentence. But everything has a time frame. That's why it has time. Yes.
Okay. Thank you so much for that discussion. So, Abdul, I made an attempt to invite the spokesman of the military, General Kulaije, and I didn't get him. So you maybe lead us on the topic.
Since you didn't get General Kulaije, you now get Corporal Katuntu to lead you through this one.
I hadn't given you a title yet. But
it's not a rank. It's called a rank.
Okay, we can take that one. So, what does restructuring the army? I tried. There was last week there was a long article in the Manisha that made me question my reading skills. So,
if you're a teacher,
indeed,
a teacher
of English.
If a teacher of English reading skills have been questioned, then this villager from Idudi. I think there was a Defense Council meeting, and the Commander-in-Chief presented what they called the establishment legal regime of the UPDF. In that, there is a statutory instrument, obviously, made under both the Constitution and then the UPDF Act. But there's something very critical that he eventually tweets, that in accordance with the Article 981 of the Constitution, he has delegated the powers of command, control, and administration of the forces to General Mbasumbadi, the current UPDF Chief of Defense Forces. One, it has never happened before. This is the first time in the history of the country that he has formally done this by instrument and informed the entire country that as Commander-in-Chief, he has delegated those powers. And in the article, so in the tweet, he says by virtue of the powers he has under Article 981. I address myself to Article 981, and that is the constitutional provision that creates the presidency. And it says the president is head of state, head of government, commander-in-chief, and fountain of honor. When you read the delegated powers, they are the powers of the commander-in-chief. Fully control, command, and administration. Those are vested within the commander-in-chief. And if he delegates them, it's not something which I am even surprised that I have not had people having a conversation about what does that mean.
Yeah.
As a commander-in-chief, when you delegate these powers of a commander-in-chief. Forget about a unit commanders, that your unit commander here, you can do this and so on. But those real powers which constitute a commander-in-chief are the ones he delegated. So, one, it is a fundamental departure from what he has been doing it, because President Museveni, as you realize, anything to do with the army, it has been pop about him as commander-in-chief. And he has effectively done so. He has been in effective control of the army. He directs even transfer the platoon. Platoon, I think, is the smallest unit of the army. Who is the commander? Where? All those things are. But here is now some other officer who is like now, who can take a decision.
But Abdul, I'm reading, there was a quote here in a Monitor for last week, Tuesday, and saying it's a pronouncement of an existing situation. The CDF commands the military on behalf of the president, who is the commander-in-chief. That is delegated authority.
No.
So you seem to be saying nothing new here.
No. He has delegated it properly. You see, even when he's commanding, he's getting authority. But if you have delegated authority, you act in that capacity. You get it? Yeah, because you see, it's like when you say No. I'm talking about the executive authority of the president. It's vested in him. So everything you just do it on his behalf. He doesn't he has delegated it. If you delegate, you have given. You get it? And somebody acts in your name. In your name. Yeah, he has full authority to take a decision. In the diplomatic world, all ambassadors represent the president.
That's the
However, when your ambassador I have problems pronouncing that name, just
plenipotentiary.
And extraordinary. Then you are a different category of ambassador. Because in the name of the president, in the name of the country, you can take a decision.
Yeah.
And during Obote too, we had Professor Katuntu. And at that time, Obote was the substantive minister of finance, but everything was being done by Katuntu. Because of that title, you would go to the World Bank and take a decision. You don't have to say, by the way, what does the president or what? He was the full authority. That's what it means. So,
but
if you are looking at a surface level.
Joe here in Bara tells you, tell Abdul, he may need to consult because this was the third time it has happened since 1986.
I don't think so. I don't think so because I've had some discussion. I don't think so. Because you see, he could have done it like you do it informally. You travel, like you have gone out of the country, then Ochena is in charge. Then you go away. But this time, you say, I'm doing it by legal instrument, and I even inform the public.
Yes.
It's different.
Ivan.
First, of course, previously, I think the difference here is in command. I think usually, previously, the CDF, the office of the CDF, has been predominantly an administrative office. Where you oversee administration of the army, stores, what you call welfare, and all those aspects of the army. Now I think the new aspect also introduced is the command element. The command and control element. But I think that when you look at the history of the NRA turned UPDF over the years, I think this is a natural progression. And perhaps the final stage in the professionalization journey of the UPDF, because this journey started, I think, with the first of all the rebranding from the NRA into UPDF and stewarding it in the 1995 Constitution. Then I think most publicly the Arunda years, from around 2003 when Arunda took command of the army, we started to show real reform of the army. And now I think around 2016, 2017, the late General Picos Kutesa, Lieutenant General Picos Kutesa, was given, I think, an office that did not exist. A new office was introduced, the office of the doctrine, head of doctrine in the UPDF. The doctrine of the army or of any institution is really the philosophical and ideological anchor of any force, of any institution. So that office was introduced, and the first head of that office was the Lieutenant General Picos Kutesa, and he's the person who started this work. of this establishment, the UPDF Establishment Act, the role of professionally now delegating these powers of these powers, so that now the CDF can be can reform, can talk about even promotions. There has always been very serious debate about promotions. What are the guidelines for promotion? And of course, the commander-in-chief does promote, but I think on the advice of the Army Council. But it's always been not publicly understood, and I don't think there has been any formal instrument that clearly regulates or gives those powers. But I think now, with this official delegation and this instrument, the office of the CDF, first of all, has been empowered. And I think also for symbolic value, for symbolic importance, for the president to mention General Wilson Mbasumbadi, officially, and hand over, symbolically, it also empowers the office of the CDF and the CDF himself. Because, like Kaduna said, it is unprecedented. We have always known that the CDF is Commander One. I think they call it Command One, and so symbolically he's the head of the army and all. But we've not had an incident where the president has officially
delegated to a person.
To delegate it to a person. So even for the person of Mbadi and as commander of the UPDF, and especially going with the recent...
I'm going to ask Malcolm whether there's any politics in it.
The recent...
Let me try to clarify that, Ivan. You see, these are what in law we call delegated powers. Delegated powers, you cannot delegate them also.
Yeah.
So what happens if Mbadi, for some reason, is not in office and there is an acting chief of defense forces, for example, his deputy, he cannot exercise those powers.
Yes.
You get the point?
Yeah.
Because those were delegated to him. So even if tomorrow General Mbadi is out of the country, and who is the deputy? If General is acting CDF, he cannot exercise those powers.
But in the broader political
Much as it
context,
will be CDF.
in the broader political context, Oscar, I think was it 2 years ago? You remember those the letters? What were they called? Where one countermanded the orders of the other. I think was it a year ago or something like that. And there was debate about the center of power in the UPDF. I think the deputy CDF gave an order, I think, which was countermanded by the chief of land forces at the time. I think this is a vote of confidence in the CDF. But also historically, Mbadi belongs to the 1985 group, the group that joined the NRA in 1985. And considering his history in the military, I think his last deployment was I think about 5 or 6 years back, what do they call the ADC of the president, before he went on to command, I think, in the 4th Division, and then returning now as head of the UPDF. Mbadi, I think, belongs to that group of, first of all, educated, but also effectively loyal. He does not belong to the historical group of the Tinyefuzas and that group that sort of had salient contestations of the military.
Ours.
This
is our thing.
Exactly. So Mbadi belongs to this group. We have been effectively mentored and trained and empowered.
You've stolen my question that I was saving for Malcolm.
Yes, so I think that he is a loyal officer, I think, and I think this is a vote of confidence for the president to say, I am delegating. This is a vote of confidence in you as a person, and it may give a signal that your loyalty is not in question. So as an officer, this is empowering for General Mbadi as commander.
Okay. Let's stop for a quick break, and then we'll have conversation continue after that break.
Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM. The Capital Gang on 91.3 Capital FM.
Welcome back from the break. More discussion in the break. So let me start with you, Malcolm, and then go to Lydia on that very question of army restructure and appointment of an existing position.
Yes, Oscar.
Was it political?
He's the political head of this country, the president, I mean. And so I don't expect him to make decisions that are not political. So yes, I verily believe that decision was a political one. Probably also in the sense that it leaves the rest of us more ordinary Ugandans speculating about what exactly is happening. Now, we've discussed at this table what that formally means, and how it is an official delegation of powers by what is in many ways a legal instrument and not just a pronouncement, and the usual way it has been done, letters from the spokesperson, and this official public delegation of those powers definitely leaves very many of us wondering and even quietly speculating on what is happening. One could think it's a sign of a transition, that you as president and commander-in-chief, there are, and over the last 30 or so years, there has been a consolidation of power in that particular office. But with the professionalization of the army, you now have a different crop of people in those positions that can be able to receive and administer those roles that he has held so close to himself. It could be a sign that 2026 is coming closer. He might not present himself, and so he's preparing ground for
what was in your coffee?
For new, but all of these are thoughts that we are all having. Like I said, more ordinary Ugandans. These are thoughts that we're all having. I think
Joseph, just check his cup of coffee. I think let me know what if he has spiced it up. There's no.
I think that.
Capital style, but nothing.
I think that
maybe too much sugar.
What we can and without fear of contradiction, I think what I can say is that the army has come a long way. From who, and I know as far as Joseph is concerned, they are NRA. They were NRA. They are still NRA.
Oh, yes, they are.
They always will be.
You can even say ragtag.
Okay. I'll use Abdul's words. From a ragtag band of people brought together, really,
to a ragtag court martial.
Those elements are still there. The elements are still there. So the professionalism is a process. So I think that this document then lays down that professional establishment that we call the UPDF and how the structures are. But I think it also, in a way, does reveal the challenges that have always been mentioned about the army. Because when you talk about consolidating units under one command, does that mean that they were not under one command, and therefore that these units would act with impunity on their own, do what they want when they want? There are some units within the army that have been accused of doing that. There are some units within the army that have been accused of doing that, of having such influence. And again, on this very table, a few weeks ago, we did talk about how some individuals get arrested and brought to a police post by a certain unit of the army and are told, this is how you proceed. Are we going to see an end to some of those things because we've now consolidated command? Honestly, Oscar, I have a lot more questions than answers. Yeah.
Lydia.
The establishment that was launched recently after the Army Council retreat is one of those documents of work that has been in progress for many years. My colleagues have talked about even the days of General Pecos Kutesa before he passed on at the doctrine. But before I actually make any contribution opinion on radio. I know for sure that this is one of those classified structured documents of the UPDF. But when the president pronounces himself on such an instrument and document, it means it has now to go for gazettement. For it to take legal effect, it has to be gazetted. Maybe after that, then they can officially or authoritatively speak or even enforce it. So we need to look at the gazette, and then we are able to know that it has legal effect. Now, having said that, I have a working relationship with the UPDF, and I know that they have their own structure of governance. There is the ministry on one side, which is led by the political heads, and also the civilians like the accounting officers, the PS. But now the UPDF as a military organization, they also have their structure. And this structure, like many of you have said, has been growing over the time and growing through structures of services. Now, the UPDF has a doctrine from the history of the Ugandan military, but it also must raise to the standards. It's like any other profession that has international standards. There are areas and doctrines of the military that must be the same like any other military in the world. What you find in Uganda should be found on any East African military. They have that relationship, but also standards internationally. So what has been happening, to the best of my knowledge, is that it has been to standardize Uganda's military to be able to align with the international standards of the military. And one of the areas they have excelled is training. Honorable Katuntu talked about the intelligent officers we have and professional. Most of them have trained, yes, in Uganda, but also abroad. There are a lot of exchanges. You find that they are in military schools in the in America, even in East Africa. You find they go out and train. If you have gone to what you all know, the Royal One of Sandhurst, but there are also other military academies where our people have gone. And when they go to train there, some of the doctrines may not be aligned. They could be domesticated. So there has been a campaign and an effort. Whoever has gone to train abroad to come back and domesticate, align what we call the one of Uganda, anchored in the Constitution, but also anchored in the UPDF Act. Just to make a mention here, Honorable Katuntu, there is an amendment of the UPDF Act on the table, either before the first parliamentary council. So that amendment, there are areas which they are planning to amend. So the UPDF Act is under amendment. So because of the amendment, it should be able to align with this establishment. So in one of these days, this book you saw the president holding on his head will find its way to the committee, both on legal and parliamentary affairs, but also on defense and internal affairs. Those two committees will have to address themselves to this amendment and align to what the establishment is speaking and the doctrine of our military in the country. And finally, is that we now have services of the UPDF that have grown and require legal effect. Even what they call the insignia, the colors, the pips, and all these uniform, they are the camouflage. We have the Air Force, we have Land Forces, we have training and sports, we have the Marine, we have the Reserve Forces. You know, Oscar, even when you retire in the military, you remain required. So you're part of the reserve. And then, of course, the SFC, which protects the Presidential Guard. We have the production you've all heard about TUNEC. And then we have the veterans who are also historical but also current. And then we have the active in service and CIMIC. CIMIC is the civil military. Recently, we're in Ibugwe, that was part of the CIMIC, you know, the civil military activities of the Tare Sita. So this document, in my opinion, has been able to collapse the whole doctrine and the structure of what speaks about the UPDF. The command, the control, and the structure, both whether it's training, whether it's land forces, whether it's air force. Now the structure is all clear, and the command is under the office of the CDF going down, and in all the divisions, because there is division 1 up to almost division 5, all these services, whether and also in and outside missions, so that this structure should be able to be aligned to the amended UPDF Act when it comes into force, and we shall have a restructured. I mean, this is now the professional and the information I can give outside what is permissible or classified, because what I know is that this is a classified document of the structure. They cannot always expose, because of the nature of the meter, they cannot expose how they are structured and how they are aligned, but they can give information as and when. There need to be basis. When you need it, they give you what. So I hope that next time the spokesperson will come and talk about the gazetted establishment and what it means to the civilians of Uganda and to the public, and then he can tell us what is classified, and we shall keep away our eyes from it.
Okay.
But that's something I can give to the public, and I think going forward, what is remains that's important about our history is to have the military museum. It's also find its way, because there is a history to that also. Since Uganda started, how did we? There has to collect all that history so that we can have the military museum, and one of the key actors of that is also the late Tumine, but of course the institution still moves on. So I thought I should speak broadly to the institution. It is beyond the current CDF, because it began before he was in office, but he has been through the ranks. He has been the Joint Chief of Staff, he has been Deputy CDF, so he's part of the institutional, he's part of the institutional memory of this establishment. Actually, I think it's part of his biggest contributor. So I think it is also good for him that during his time, it has come to pass.
Joseph, you have Greens Kansime, and
Yes.
Greens Kansime says on Twitter, the restructuring in UPDF is simply mandating control and management of the force under the CDF. Keyword: simply mandating.
Simply mandating. So that leader has been trying very, very hard to play semantics on.
I'm not trying hard. I'm giving a narration to which I have an experience.
Indeed, and possibly authority. But
Yes.
the point is this: why I actually take that line is that I'm actually quite surprised that in 38 years of NRA in power, we would be talking about professionalizing. So you can imagine how long it takes, and then you expect 4 years of a body to professionalize successfully in a manner in which while they're being beaten just up here in Matuga. No, actually, no. Seriously, but so I think there is something else going on, and Lydia knows it, quite clearly. But
I have told you what I know.
You've told us what you are mandated.
Yes, what you need to know basis.
I'm not blaming you, my sister. No, I'm just thinking that this is transition politics. That quite clearly it is the case that Mr. Museveni and possibly Greens is insinuating the same, that there is some kind of realignment going on. There is some kind of preparations and realization that is no longer business as usual, nor is it necessarily the case that is now 1996. We are in the year 2026 very, very soon, and going forward. And going forward in a situation in which perhaps the commander-in-chief, point number 2, is possibly not only a tired man, but maybe a man who's possibly so limited by reality of time and age that he requires some guys who would maybe possibly be loyal, and that even if they're disloyal yesterday, which is now point by number 3, they need to be put in particular cages so that power is continuously consolidated under the natural space that we've always known, meaning the command of Comrade Mr. Museveni. I think that the final bit I could say is that I would not rule out a possibility that is also about creating order within the same contradictions, considering some of the things that has happened in the last 18 months, involving
the military.
And the international standards, and basically that's part of my point. If it takes us 38 years to realize that the actually international standards of the military that we should be able to apply today, then it means there is a particular problem. But no, I actually think that knowing very well that once upon a time in the last 2 years or so, there were nearly uncoordinated movement of troops, and within the last 12 months or so, there have been tweets that have been both contradictory, in many cases possibly humiliating and embarrassing in some situations. It's possibly not surprising that this could easily be a remedy to either a civil society organization or a pressure group or a section of the military that are very decent men predominantly, but who at the same time can also be excitable and enough to cause a concern for the top executive and chief commander-in-chief, who may not necessarily have the speed with which to resolve. But quickly, it's important that whatever he does.
There's an Albert here who sent a message saying, Lydia is being theoretical and academic and not on the ground. There are other generals are far more powerful than the CDF.
You know, to be fair, Lydia sits at the center of this thing.
She's sick. Yeah.
She's sick indeed.
That is the establishment, the reality, and the.
No, but I think, Oscar, why we must all be concerned is because it's true that the stability of the military is important for us as a country, and the stability of this military under the current system, in which, as I said, the commander-in-chief, may not necessarily be somebody who is able to run 100 meters as he would be able to do so 20 years ago, is a matter of concern. So whatever happens, that we talk loyalty, that you see people now moving to a pressure group simply because they think the commander-in-chief desires, tells you some of the things that happened to us in Toro the other day, where just a desire for people to raise concerns about Nagongera Road, people, including ministers in government, will say that, well, you can't go and demonstrate because you'll annoy the person of the president, and until people wake up and simply say, no, you can't do it like that, they suddenly realize that, no, we've taken a wrong position, so they retreat. So no, it is very much about a transition, but because this is a military, effectively military regime, whatever happens in the military and however it happens, particularly leading to an imperative transition, is extremely important to all of us.
Lydia is off to the barrio, just as I was bringing up.
Lydia, send my regards. Yes.
Yes. Just as I was bringing up a conversation on what the SEC deferred.
Lydia is a lawyer, Timing is important. Language is important. Mode is important.
I should say she has gone to the barrio. But there was this a tweet, Abdul, saying the SEC, Central Executive Committee of NRM, deferred discussion on a particular matter. And maybe this one is Ivan to give it his 2 minutes and have a 2 minutes round the table to conclude
Ivan,
the gang of today.
You have the privilege.
Yeah.
No, look, I think that the other day we saw the Patriotic League of Uganda launch itself as a political pressure group. And
political pressure group, that's new.
Yeah, and you had senior members of the NRM present, including the SEC member, the Honorable Captain Mike Mkula. You had the cabinet ministers, present. You had even Lydia said here, I think she was invited or something, or she wasn't able to make it. You had the members of parliament, a majority of whom were NRM leaning. So obviously, PLU is of interest to the NRM. And if you have SEC members, NRM SEC members present at the launch of the PLU, then it is a legitimate matter of discussion for the party, and to discuss its relationship, first of all, with the pressure group and how the party proceeds. And so I think that for SEC to meet over that matter is legitimate. So if any political party, if today NUP found its regional vice chairpersons all of a sudden launching a pressure group the next day or something like that, then they would be legitimate to host an extraordinary.
So it's real and internal crisis, we would say.
I don't think it's a crisis. I think it's something, because I don't think they were shocked. I don't think anybody was shocked within, because we've seen this one building up. Initially, it was individual members. Then members of parliament started showing face. Then you had
Ministers now.
ministers and others. So it's been a progressive evolution. And previously, it was Mhozi MK movement. Now it's been launched as a public
PLU.
non-partisan political pressure group. So the NRM has legitimate reason to say, it is open. You
But
Malcolm, can
thank you. Your 2 minutes are out. 2 minutes to. It will be discussed in the next SEC meeting. So, why should that be surprising?
Well, the only surprise about it is like at some point, the contradiction about General Mohoz still being in uniform should be settled.
Yeah.
I think that's the only contradiction which is there. I am not one of those people who think because General Mohoz is President Museveni's son, then he's disabled from participating in Ugandan politics. I think that's not correct. Every Ugandan, you have a right, a legitimate right, to participate in the politics of your country at whatever level. Every Ugandan can have ambition, whether you want to compete for LC1 chairperson or president. Being a son of so-and-so cannot be a big issue. So whether you are Mini's son, you are Bote's son, you are Lutwa's son, and actually these are political families. We can't run away from them. So the contradiction which should be sorted out, and the sooner the MK movement, they sort that out, the better. Either the MK movement or the president as being the commander-in-chief. Because, see, it's causing all this conversation. Why? Because there are people say it is only possible for him to do the politics because he's President Yoweri Museveni's son. So I think that should be sorted out, and the decision should be taken whether to release General Mohoz from the army and he goes full politics, or it doesn't look well to continue being in the army, and then there is a political movement you are heading and advocating for you to be a politician. So that matter should be sorted out, and the earlier the president sorts out that, the better for both himself, General Mohoz, and the country.
Malcolm, your 2 minutes, and then we'll have Joseph conclude Capital Gang for today.
Yeah,
give him Joseph the last one.
Are you still concerned that much about
you can be
UPC?
sure UPC will be mentioned somewhere in there. I think it's a veiled attempt, in my opinion, to legitimize what we have been seeing going around. Because, and just like my senior Abdul says, how there's an attempt to find out ways of placing a serving military general away from the center, because just by renaming it the Patriotic Movement, Patriotic League, does very little to take away from what it truly is, what has been. Just that when it was the MK movement, was clearly about MK, who is a serving military officer and shouldn't be engaged in partisan politics. No, not shouldn't. It is actually illegal to do so. There's another constitutional court proceeding that we're waiting on as well on that issue. Although it is settled that serving army officers must not be involved in partisan politics. I guess the question is what exactly is partisan politics? Can they have social commentary? But I think we must accept would be deceiving ourselves if we think that the MK movement as it is now, or as it then was and morphing into the Patriotic League, is anything but a political movement. Okay. So trying to find a balance where MK can still be involved, still be the apple of their eye, while still serving in the army.
Joseph, to conclude the show, This is
just
about the third week where I ask a question and answers are very different. Because this was about a SEC meeting that shall meet again, so they said, deferring an item for discussion.
But I thought the item for discussion is what we've discussed. Is then which you are having discomfort discussing.
Now that is how sensitively uncoordinated it is. Quite honestly, that's the conclusion. But since I have another 30 seconds, I'll say that no. That is basically confirmation for one of the reasons, possibly, that General Mbadi is in a position in which he is, considering the situation and circumstance in which we are. But that said, I don't know, because that is the other end. But whatever the case, I think what concerns me, as Malcolm says, is whatever happens going forward, and I concur with Abdul, that really Muhoozi or anybody else who wants to participate in national politics is free to do so. The only thing is that they should do so within the law of the land. And so there's no reason why the young guy is not retired. And whatever perceptions people might have, they may merely be perceptions, they're concluded. I was just concerned, though, quickly, that the other day when this launch took place, in the side of it, people came from around the country, and I just wonder who funds these guys, who paid for those people, and if they're public servants in the offices, who gave them the delegated powers to take leave, and is it going to be paid? And those are public interest issues. So basically, how these guys manage these things in such a manner that the perception that there is impunity, and the perception that there is a foregone position, and the perception that basically a particular narrative is being built to serve a particular service. If I was advising government, that's what I would be advising NRA guys to manage this process going forward.
Thank you so much, Joseph Otieno, UPC member for life. Ivan was worried that you're having last word on gang, but
I took notes.
you took note.
I saw Ivan's body language, so no, I had to spare the young man from.
Thank you so much, listeners of the Capital Gang. Thank you, Star Cafe, for powering the gang. The chapati slices increased. Thank you, gang panelists over there, Ivan Rogamba, Lydia Wanyoto, Malcolm Pamizo, Abdul Katuntu, and Joseph Otieno, our guest today. Thank you. I am Oscar Semoyam Soke, and I shall see you next week.